On January the 8th, a maintenance worker attacked a group of children with a hammer at a Beijing primary school, apparently in response to losing his job. 20 students were injured, with 3 requiring intensive care. So how could this happen in a primary school? What causes someone to hurt innocent children? And what more can we do to ensure on-campus security and safety of young people generally? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Dr. Tong Xiaojun, Director of the Research Institute of Children and Adolescents at the University of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and Mr. Sebastian Kuster, Chief Representative of Save the Children China. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Pan Deng. Dear guests, it's good to know that all those affected or injured children are in good doctors' hands. But comparing to physical recovery, maybe psychological recovery is a longer path. Dr. Tong, tell us how difficult or what should we do in their psychological recovery?
It will take time, and first the family needs to give a very good care and support to the children, and then let them feel they are safe wherever they stay. And the most difficult thing for them for future, or for at least a short future, will be in public places, you know, going out of the family and then being separated from the family members, and then they probably won't feel very safe for quite some time.
But what about going back to school? Do you think the school, the management should also be a part of that psychological recovery?
I think the students need to be to be given counseling, to tell them what happened, and then how they can deal with this kind of thing, crisis, and then how to help themselves or protect themselves in such kind of a crisis. And then, of course, the whole campus, both teachers and the students, needs to work together to let everybody know that they are protected, and then they are safe, and then such kind of things won't the same thing won't happen.
Right, but could we be a little bit more specific? Because you just cannot simply tell the children that you are safe now. So how to address this ordeal they just experienced from parents, from school, and from counselors?
As I said just now, first is the whole campus. I know right now the administrative offices of the campus, and also the city government has been involved in this, and then providing, like, you know, the police to guard the campus. I mean, let people know, see them there, and then the police, of course, make them feel safe. This is first. And second is the school needs to work with parents, and then let parents learn how to comfort children at home, and also you know, going every day when they send kids to school, then what they can say to them, and then what they can do with the children, and then help them to recover from that kind of crisis.
Oh, Mr. Kuster, this year marks the 100th anniversary of your organization, Save the Children. So, from the past century's experience, what do you think there is a common practice in dealing with ordeals like this for children?
So, on our end, as Save the Children, and yes, working for 100 years on those issues and in many different contexts, we have come up with a variety of approaches in our child protection work, and in particular in school safety. Save the Children's Safe School approach promotes strong work with the authorities to design and then implement proper systems and policies to prevent as much as possible harm to children in school, and to improve school safety management in particular. And within that approach, we work collectively with the school management, the teachers, but first and foremost with the children and their parents, to include them in the process of analyzing the risks that they're faced with in the school environment, and that can range for a variety of different risks, and to come up with then a plan, a school management plan, to address those with concrete actions, and in particular working with the teachers and the school management and the children, and training them in knowing what to do when such incidents happen. This is what we apply here in China, in our programs in the country, but also more globally across other countries.
Now let's go through that step by step. First, what do you make of the response from the administrative level? Because we know that several hours after that incident on January the 8th, the districts have held Xicheng district held a press conference, all related, head of all related departments came forward, addressed the incident directly, and nearly all related resources were mobilized. Is this a standard procedure?
So yes, I believe that the standard procedures were followed in that particular case. First, let me say that as much as shocked and saddened by the incident itself, and our thoughts go with the families and the children that were affected, obviously, we were also relieved, as you were mentioning at the beginning, to hear that all the children are in a stable state at the moment, which I think is due to the reactivity of the authorities and the stakeholders that were involved in responding to that incident. The response from the Education Bureau, from the school, from the police, from the hospitals were very quick, and they provided immediate clinical as well as psychosocial care to the children that were affected, as well as the other children that were in the school. So on that front, it was a rapid and positive response to the incident. I think the main reflection that comes next is what next. So how do we continue further improving the school safety environment? And as I said, in the approach that we have as Save the Children, we are promoting some very concrete steps to move towards that in the schools that we support.
So, Dr. Tung, what do you make of the response this time? Do you think government at different levels in China now have a contingency plan in dealing with incidents like this?
At this moment, I don't think the government at all levels are ready to deal with such kind of things, because it appeared an individual accident because of some coincidental causes. But when this happened, we need to, like to save the life first, the children directly affected by this accident, and then the whole school, the students and teachers at the whole campus needs to be helped. And then I don't think at this moment the whole country, all the schools have such kind of emergency plan, to deal with such kind of crisis. But as we talked just now, the government and also the schools in Beijing or Xicheng city of Beijing have done a very good job. But this is something that we need to learn for future. To better prepared, because if we were prepared very well, and I don't think such kind of accidents will happen like this. That means, when we say we need to get ready or we get prepared, that means we need to get the whole environment, child friendly, at any time or at all the time, we should say. That means if people working on the campus have something affected their psychosocial, emotional or emotions so seriously, they need to be supported, and then they probably want to try to find such kind of way to express their emotion or their feeling that they feel they hurt.
So you're saying that it should always hope for the best but prepare for the worst?
Oh yeah, right, right. And what I want to say is, we talked about child protection, but child protection is related to awareness of, all kinds of harms or crises that may happen anytime towards the children.
But there's a very subtle balance you need to pay attention to. You can't simply tell the children that you are living in a dangerous environment.
That's right.
Scared,
yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying. So we are talking about child protection based on the accident happened, the other day. But I want to say is that this accident actually resulted from some, the personal feeling, and why he did this, because he was so frustrated or anxious, had kind of anxiety in his mind.
But whatever his feeling is, that cannot justify his behavior, because,
That's right.
life's unfair for everyone.
That's right. So we're talking about two things. One thing is that everybody needs to be educated that children are the precious choice of the whole society, or human resource of the whole society. We need to protect them, and then no matter what happened, we need to avoid hurting or injure children. This is one thing we need to do.
Right.
And then the other thing is that we need to provide a very, the harmonious society. The environment, or child-friendly environment. And then this kind of environment, of course, the most important thing is the awareness, or the belief, saying children are precious. We need to protect them. We don't.
Especially in a sensitive environment such as a campus, right?
Campus, yeah, right.
Okay.
Campus.
Talking about awareness, Mr. Kuster, do you think children should be taught how to protect themselves when an incident like this happens?
Yes. Children...
Should that be compulsory?
We think, as Save the Children, that child participation is absolutely key to everything that we do and to all the programs that we implement. We are an organization that is child-focused, that serves children to ensure their well-being, and we need to listen to children to know what they consider to be what needs to happen for their well-being. We also need to take them into account and integrate them in our programs by, yes, training them, informing them, not training as such, but informing them of the risks that are identified in the school environment, how to recognize those, how to bring those up when they identify them happening or about to happen, and so what are the reporting mechanisms within the school environment, but even beyond. We are working on strengthening child protection systems. It's not just about the school, it's obviously going beyond, and so for them to be able to raise their voice when they feel something that is not correct or wrong is happening, but then it's the question of, okay, so what support systems do we have in front of that to be able to appropriately respond to their needs, and this is what we're working in our Safe School approach, in making sure that then the school management, the school environment, the teachers, the parents know how to also identify the risks and how to respond to them. So the treatment of cases when they happen, providing psychosocial support, but also making sure that actions are taken to make the school environment safe.
Well, dear guests, we'll be continuing this discussion right after this. You're watching Dialogue on CGTN. Stay with us. Well, dear guests, let's expand the scope of our discussion a little bit. Incidents like this can be called incidents, but let's talk about some phenomena. For example, school bullying. Do you think it shares some same nature with incidents like this, Dr. Tom?
Okay, to my knowledge, I think in terms of self-protection, I think they share some common things there. Means children needs to be educated or learn how to identify the danger factors around them, and then try to do something to prevent to be hurt. So in terms of this, I think they share the common thing. But in terms of how to say prevention, by the school or by the whole society, I think bullying is more preventable to me. Means it carries some law. I mean some rules there, and then
tell
we
us
need to
something about those rules you just mentioned.
Here, for example, when we talk about school bullying, usually it started at certain kind of age of young students, like in higher, like junior or senior grades in primary schools. It started from that time, and then probably it will be relieved a little bit or getting better a little bit, like reaching the senior grade in high school. I mean senior high school. So in that kind of period of time, school bullying, the phenomenon, could be seen more often than other times. I mean, in the life of students. So this is one thing. And then the other thing is that children with certain kind of characteristics probably are easier to become the victims of a bullying, like the students from with kind of quiet personality, or coming from a kind of a different background, or the family background.
So
then
when you talk about prevention, you're focusing more on the victim side, but it's more difficult to prevent perpetrators of bullying from doing so.
No. When we talk about prevention of school bullying, we're talking about the prevention of both sides, because for us, both sides...
Which side is more difficult for you?
I think probably they're the same, because the research indicates that the victim of the bullying very often will be transformed into like the perpetrators towards other children later on, because they want to, being bullied, and they feel so shamed and also so, unrespected, or all those kind of unhappy feelings, and then they try to release all those kind of feelings, or try to get some respect, self-respect, and then they will use the same way, same thing, same behavior towards the other children, and then in that way to gain something to balance their own themselves. So when we talk about prevention, in our view, both victimized children and also perpetrator children, they are both victims in our side, because they are all young, and they are in the process of forming their own values, and also learning how to deal with conflict.
Is this in fact caused by hormone, or there are psychological problems involved
to me,
too?
it's very much related to the developmental issues. But of course, they are all also related to culture and also the environment. So
and
it's not so
global
easy.
Problem, right?
Yeah, right.
School bullying, Mr. Acosta. So from your involvement in related cases, what would you say are some effective measures to deal with this?
So I think, to go along the lines of what Professor said, we consider our approach to child protection, Save the Children's approach to child protection, as needing to be holistic. We're not differentiating between children or victim or perpetrators when we're approaching child protection work. I think research show that obviously a perpetrator is a perpetrator because of, or might be a perpetrator of bullying because of things that are happening in his own or her own environment that creates that situation. Victims are obviously affected. Bullying causes distress, lower self-esteem, etc. But the perpetrators also have some issues or need some support. So what we do in our programs here in China and everywhere else in the world is First of all, to promote the proper conduct of children within the school environment, first of all, in order to make sure that the interpersonal relationships are appropriate, providing support with building proper social-emotional skills of children for interaction between one another, but also with adults in the school environment or elsewhere. And then what we do is that we Save the Children, we work in helping and supporting children in identifying when such risks of bullying or any other form of abuse actually start to occur, to be able to see when those happen, and then be able to, again, through reporting mechanisms that we put in place in schools and other settings, be able to report those cases up through the proper channels and through people that are able to help them in dealing with them, providing direct support, but also making sure that such practices stop.
Now, Dr. Tong, let's talk about another much more difficult challenge, that is child sexual abuse. Now, according to a report on child sexual abuse in 2017 released by the China Foundation of Culture and Arts for Children, around almost 60% of the cases were committed by acquaintances, and almost 35% of the perpetrators were teachers. So, how difficult is it for you to address this issue in your research?
I mean, the research here in China probably is on this topic is very difficult, because there's no way for us to find the victims or the perpetrators to do the real research. But
why is it so difficult?
Because
the victims will not come forward.
You know, I think it's the same in other countries in the whole world. You know, sexual abuse or sexuality actually is a taboo area, especially when young children are sexually abused. Not only they themselves, very often because they're young and they don't know what's going on, and they don't know this is something that they are abused, and because the perpetrators, adult perpetrators, very often can control them or inform them, misinform the children. So for themselves, there's no way for them. It's very often they could not identify what's going on. And second is for the family. If they don't say anything, and then people around them, if they don't have that kind of awareness, and then it's very difficult for them to know what's going on or to identify it. So first themselves, and then the family, and then people around them is the same.
Is this a common problem around the world, Mr. Kuster?
Yes, it is. I mean, unfortunately, we know that most of such cases happen in environments that children are familiar with. The family, the school environment, as you were saying, and to go along the lines of what has just been said, awareness raising is extremely important within the prevention cycle of response to such cases. But
what about regulation and legislation?
I think regulations and legislations are there in most cases.
So
in
it's
most
more about
countries.
enforcement, you're saying?
No, not necessarily about enforcement, because I think when such cases come up, then the law is being enforced in most cases. I think it's around having those cases being reported, actually, and so this is why I think the prevention side of things, in addition obviously to the response side later on, but the prevention side of things, as was being said, is really critical in the awareness raising of both the children, the families, the teachers if it's in the school environment, but the wider community about such issues, to be able to identify when symptoms of when such things are happening, and then again being very clear that it's not right, and that then children or whoever sees such things has the right to be raising his or her voice to mention that, and then making sure that the systems behind are then able to appropriately address the issue, making sure that the reporting mechanisms are clear, and then that there is a way to address those issues afterwards.
So, yes,
yeah, but
please,
talking
Dr.
about the legislation, I think in China we do have some space needs to be improved or to do something there. Is that here in China, I think in the past 3 years, we changed one thing. There's one, is for young girls, if they are sexually abused, we did not, I mean, before the change of that form, we did not call it's a sexual abuse. It's kind of something that the adults did something wrong, you know, in the wrong way towards the female girls. And then the punishment was not so serious, was not enough, I mean, serious enough. So we changed that one, and then to put that kind of, to recognize that kind of behavior as child sexual abuse. But
that's a serious crime.
Yeah, this is a serious crime, but we do not, till now, we do not have a specific crime for this kind of action. We combine this kind of crime with the adult, the sexual abuse.
In a rape category or something else?
We need to have a separate category for children, for child sexual abuse, instead of putting them together with the adult thing. Because sexual abuse among adults, you know, because they are adults, so the way to...
The whole legal context is
right,
different.
It's different. You know, the definition of the action and the definition and also the punishment would be different. So now we need to work on that.
Are you working on that right now?
Yeah, a group of children, a group of people like of course, including me. I'm sure including Save the Children together.
Is it going well?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, because the whole child protection system building in China actually has made rapid progress in the past 5 years.
So we've talked about legislation. What about the role of media in protecting children, Mr. Kuster?
I think from our point of view, in such incidents, and most particularly in incidents of sexual abuses, the first purpose when those are obviously confirmed is to protect the victim. And so we recommend, and that's the approach that we take in our programs as Save the Children or whenever we support such cases, is to make sure that there is no publicity of the situation and of that particular incident, and particularly of the victim, in order to protect his or her identity and his or her privacy, as well as the rest of the family. It's a very traumatic experience, obviously, but the aftermath of such an experience can be even more traumatic if not dealt with appropriately. So that's the stand that we take as Save the Children.
Thank you very much, dear guest, for input. And that's it for this edition of Dialogue on CGTN. I'm Handong in Beijing. Bye-bye.